Hello class, Bob Greavy again. Welcome to chapter 6. In this chapter we're going to talk a little bit about the knowledge worker. We're going to talk about organizational information in that context. So the class is information technology. So if it hadn't been obvious enough, we're talking about how organizations use information that's derived from data to do everything from manage to facilitate processes to make better decisions. So this chapter hits on some of the basics of data and information. We want to get 4 primary traits that determine the value of information out of this chapter, among other things. So some obvious things. Information is everywhere in an organization. You'll probably see statistics, you've probably seen statistics that indicate that we have more data today than ever. That's obvious. But what's just phenomenal is the rate of growth of data. There's literally more data and information out there than we could possibly process in a timely manner. So let me talk about what a knowledge worker is. When I was a kid, my granddad was a blue collar worker, and he would work with physical, tangible inputs, and he would produce physical, tangible outputs. So he would assemble tractor trailers. The knowledge worker works with intangible inputs and often has intangible outputs. So a knowledge worker might work with data and information. They might meet with others. They might communicate and interact and collaborate with others. But then their output is largely intangible as well. Perhaps they make a decision, or they lead, or they manage, or they produce a report. But oftentimes their product, their work product, is less tangible than a physical product. So we are all, here's the thing, we are all knowledge workers. More than likely, everyone in the class will be, and perhaps currently is, a knowledge worker. Someone who, rather than works with their hands, works with data and information and produces a often intangible product. So our job is to learn about what are our tools, what are our inputs, what are our typical outputs to some extent here. Employees must be able to obtain and analyze the many different levels, formats, and granularities. These are 3 attributes of data that we're going to look at. So as a knowledge worker, you'll need to successfully collect, compile, sort, analyze information in order to make decisions and manage. So let's just define a few things. Information levels. Different people within the organization will need different levels of, let's say, granularity. I'm going to start at the bottom. Information granularity speaks to how detailed the data is. So, for example, if you can picture a sales receipt from the last time you went, let's say, grocery shopping, on that receipt you'll have individual lines that will say, I purchased this product and I purchased in this quantity, and this was the price accordingly. That could be a very fine granule of data. Now, as opposed to that, you think of that grocery store's chain's annual sales number. That would be a very coarse piece of information because it results from the aggregation of many fine pieces of data. So this is just terminology. So think of granular, think of a grain of sand, an individual grain of sand, very, very fine grain data, an individual piece of data. And then aggregate or coarse data is the result of aggregating all of those fine pieces of data. Oftentimes it's expressed statistically. This is the mean and standard deviation of our sales, or this is the total for a particular time period. But we've worked with and summarized data in some way for it to be coarse. Back to the top, the information levels. Here's the thing I want you to remember, that as you move up in the organization, say move from the teller to the teller supervisor to the bank manager to the regional manager to the president of the bank, as you move up in an organization, you have more data underneath you. See if that doesn't make sense. If you're the cashier at Walmart, You have data surrounding just the transactions you facilitate. If you're the manager of that Walmart store, you're concerned with every transaction. And if you're the president of Walmart entirely, then you're concerned with all data that's produced, not at an individual level though. So as you move up the organization, you're dealing with more and more data, and therefore you're depending on less and less granularity. So when the cashier looks at sales, they look at a sale, the most recent transaction. When the president of the company looks at sales, they look at perhaps an aggregation of sales by region. So the higher we move up in the organization, the more data we have underneath us, and the higher we move up in an organization, the more aggregated or coarse that granularity must be by necessity. You couldn't possibly study, absorb every single piece of data in an organization of any size. The middle point here, just want to make a point that information resides in many different formats. They mention a couple here: documents, presentations, spreadsheets, and a database. But information also resides in emails, information resides in videos, information resides in images, information resides in audio, information resides in people's minds, information resides in physical paper, file cabinets, this type of thing. Okay, we've kind of hit on this transactional versus analytical information here. When you see the word transaction, you probably, if you're like most people, think of an exchange of a product or service for money. Here, transaction is just, it could be that, but a transaction could also be an event during which we capture some data. So it could be that an invoice is a piece of data, but so is a customer call, a customer service activity, a quality outcome. Anything can generate data, and we'd call that a transaction. Okay, so transaction need not be limited to an exchange of a product or service for money. In this context, it can mean any event that generates a piece of data. Okay, so transactional data, very granular. Analytical information, the word analytical should tip you off. We've analyzed the data, we've done something with it, we've aggregated data. So analytical information results from the analysis of multiple units of transactional data. Encompasses all organizational information, and its primary purpose is to support the performing of managerial analysis tasks. So analytical information, we analyze a situation so that we can make managerial decisions. Here's a slide that just illustrates what that might look like. You see on the left transactional information going in, sales receipt, an airline ticket, a packing slip. All of these events, if you will, all of these objects of events create granular data. This data is stored in a database. More on database and database management systems on a later video. That data is all resides within the database, and then through queries and reports, we're able to generate useful, actionable information from them. So one way to think about it is data goes in. Think of data as a very raw and granular, and then information comes out. The textbook is using information interchangeably with data. Think of data as raw though, and information as analytical. It's been processed. So here we have statistics on our products, sales projections or forecasts, and then trends. Another attribute of data is the timeliness of data. If I told you that a particular stock was going to double yesterday, that doesn't help you much. So timely in this context means that there's enough time to act on the data or information you receive. Different types of systems require real-time information. Others, it's not as important. If you think of some obvious ones, I bet you've got a couple of things in your mind. The pilot of an airplane needs real-time information. It does me no good to know what my altitude was 10 minutes ago. A surgeon needs real-time information. It does me no good to know what your heart rate is or your blood pressure was several minutes ago. Less obvious, less obvious examples might be financial services organizations need to know what a particular investment is trading for that second, or what a particular balance is at a particular point in time. Where it's less needed are where we have time and will need time to act on information, and that time is available. So perhaps I get sales data. I don't need to know necessarily what sales are every second of the day, but perhaps at the end of the day or every couple of days if I can access that information. It's plenty. Information quality. Well, if you can imagine in your mind a continuum of lousy decisions on the left, a continuum all the way to solid decisions on the right, as we move from left to right, we're going to need increasingly better information. Or said differently, as we increase the quality of our information, the likelihood of a good decision, a positive outcome, a good strategy is correlated with the quality of information. This is simple. This is obvious. So the better quality we have, the more certainty we have. We'll actually calculate something in a later chapter called the expected value of perfect information, which is the value of having certainty, the value of knowing what might happen. And that's going to drive this point home that the greater the quality of our information, the closer we are to something called certainty, where we know what will happen for a given activity. So business decisions are only as good as the quality of the information used to make the decisions. That's common sense. Okay. Here's some characteristics of high quality information. See if these aren't obvious. Number one, accurate. Somebody in there right now listening to this is going, well, duh. Well, the second one, complete information is necessary. How often do you analyze something, just making a decision in your personal life, and you're missing some piece of the puzzle? And what do? You have to make assumptions. You have to use rules of thumb as opposed to finding an optimal solution. So we want, as best we can, to have complete information. Consistent means that information does not conflict with other information. We might have some info that says this is good, other information that says this is bad. I might have financial information or quantitative information that does not add up. So I might have total sales that don't add up with my individual daily sales. So you need consistency. Unique, when we capture data, we try to capture data once at the source, and that eliminates the possibility of having redundant data. Redundant data opens up an opportunity for having inconsistent data. So ideally, we want to capture data one time, not multiple times, accurately. And we've talked about how information needs to be timely. Timely may mean different things depending on what it's regarding. Here's an example of a few rows, 4 rows in what might be a database table. Data is captured tabularly in terms of how we format data in a database. We'll get into entities and relationships and primary keys and foreign keys and how we tie all this together in a database a little bit later. But in this example, we've got examples of poor quality or quality issues. You see we've got missing data in some places. We've got redundant data here. We've got Jenny Robert. Jenny Roberts, probably the same person because they're at the same address. You've got the same phone number and a fax number and the phone cell, so that's probably incorrect. So these issues cause problems with in this example, customer relationship management. Okay. So here's some costs and problems with poor quality information, or reasons for, rather, poor quality information. Customers intentionally enter inaccurate information to protect their privacy. I'm wondering if you've ever done that. I think I may have done that. Different entry standards and formats. So sometimes I key in, let's say, a rating from 1 to 5. Other times my rating is from 1 to 10. And when we mix that data, we run into some issues. Operators enter abbreviated or erroneous information by accident or to save time. So think of an employee, perhaps, who keys in data as part of their workflow, and they have different abbreviations than their coworkers. Now you have columns of data with different formats, and it makes it difficult to look at trends in that particular attribute over time because it's in different formats. Okay. Problems with low quality information are obvious. You've got kind of a garbage in, garbage out situation. But with customer data, inability to accurately track customers. So you don't know if someone is still buying from you or not. You don't know what their purchase patterns are. So it makes it more challenging to market effectively to those customers and sell effectively. Difficulty on identifying which customers are the most valuable. Inability to identify selling opportunities. These are all issues that we have something called a customer relationship management system that help us to optimize these activities. More on that in a later chapter. We introduced it at an earlier chapter. A couple more obvious points. High quality information can significantly improve the chances of making a good decision. When we get into decision theory, we'll look at the concept of risk. Risk is the environment where we can assign probabilities to future states of nature. So I might not know what conditions will be like, but I know there's a 90% chance conditions will be good, a 10% chance conditions might be bad. The point here is the closer we are to certainty, the closer we are to knowing that this has a 100% probability, the better our expected values of our decisions are. We'll actually do calculations around this a little bit later in the class.